They say loyalty lasts forever. They're wrong. At 3 o'clock in the morning, in the industrial kitchen of Ashwood Manor, a 17-year-old girl stood on a wooden step stool, her hands submerged in water so hot it had turned her skin the color of raw meat. 200 dishes. Bone china from a dinner party 3 days past. Crystal stemware that cost more than most people earned in a month. Copper pots blackened with use, each one requiring the kind of attention that left fingertips cracked and bleeding. The girl's name was Alessandra Graves, but everyone who mattered called her Alessa. She wasn't crying. Graves women didn't cry. Her grandfather had taught her that before she could walk. Before her mother died wearing a bulletproof vest that wasn't quite bulletproof enough. Before the world of vampires and werewolves and ancient blood debts became the only world she knew. The kitchen was dark except for the harsh LED light above the industrial sink. It cast shadows that made the room look larger than it was, emptier, more honest about what it truly represented. A cage. Alessa scrubbed a dinner plate with methodical precision. Her movements were automatic. Muscle memory built over 72 hours of enforced labor. 72 hours since Harrison Voss, Chief Financial Officer of Ashwood Enterprises, had summoned her to his office with that smile that never reached his eyes. That smile that had fooled everyone for 250 years. The bruise on her left cheekbone throbbed with each heartbeat, purple and yellow and sick. A handprint, 5 fingers, werewolf strength, carefully controlled, just enough to hurt, not enough to break. Scarlett Ironwood had excellent control for someone who hadn't completed her first transformation yet. Alessa's arms ached, the kind of deep, bone-tired ache that suggested the body was running on reserves it didn't have. She hadn't slept in 36 hours, hadn't eaten in 12. The last thing she'd consumed was black coffee at 6 p.m., standing over a laptop in the servants' quarters, trying to trace a financial discrepancy that Harrison Voss insisted she'd created. $50,000. Missing. Gone. And somehow, according to the audit trail Voss had presented to Dante Ashwood himself, Alessa's digital signature was all over the transfer. She knew it was a lie. She also knew that in the world of supernatural politics and centuries-old power structures, the truth was whatever the person with the most authority said it was. Alessa had been working for Dante Ashwood for 2 years, junior financial auditor, the youngest person ever hired into Ashwood Enterprises' accounting division. She'd earned that position. Straight A's at St. Jude's Academy, despite being one of only 7 humans in a student body of 300. Perfect score on her Series 7 securities exam at 16. Fluent in financial derivatives, forensic accounting, and the kind of pattern recognition that made her dangerous to anyone trying to hide money. Her grandfather had taught her well. Colonel Thaddeus Graves, 68 years old, 25 years of service. Career, the Chosin Reservoir, the kind of winter that killed men before the enemy ever got a chance. He'd come home with a bronze star, a purple heart, and the unshakable belief that competence was the only currency that mattered. "You're a Graves," he'd told her when she was 8 years old, teaching her to shoot a .22 rifle at tin cans in the woods behind their house. "We don't ask for mercy, we earn respect." She was earning it now, one scalding dish at a time. The grandfather clock in the West Wing chimed 3 times. The sound echoed through the manor like a funeral bell, like a countdown, like time itself was trying to tell her something she already knew. She was running out of it. Alessa reached for another plate. Her hands slipped. The porcelain hit the edge of the granite counter and shattered. The sound was violent in the quiet, sharp, final. She stared at the broken pieces. 7 years bad luck, her mother used to say. But Alessa's luck had run out 5 years ago when her mother took a bullet meant for Dante Ashwood. When the Vampire King had knelt beside her mother's body in that parking garage and made a promise. "Your daughter will want for nothing. I swear it on my blood." Vampire oaths were binding, supernatural law, the kind of promise that carried weight across centuries. And yet here she was. Washington dishes at 3 in the morning because Harrison Voss had decided that a blood oath wasn't worth the paper it would have been written on. Alessa bent down to pick up the shards. Her vision swam. Exhaustion, dehydration, the kind of physical depletion that made the world tilt sideways. She didn't hear him approach. Dante Ashwood moved the way apex predators moved, silent, inevitable, the kind of presence that changed the air pressure in a room before he ever spoke a word.
You missed a spot.
Alessa's head snapped up. Her heart, already racing, kicked into overdrive. The adrenaline hit her system like a drug. Dante stood in the kitchen doorway, 6'3", broad shoulders that belonged on a soldier, not a financier. He wore a charcoal silk robe over black pajama pants. His feet were bare. His hair, dark as ink, was slightly disheveled, like he'd just woken up. Like 3 a.m. was an unusual hour for him. It wasn't.
Vampires of his bloodline didn't sleep.
They prowled. They hunted. They occupied the hours between midnight and dawn like kings surveying their territory. And Dante Ashwood was a king, 600 years old, born in 1424 in what would eventually become London, survived the Wars of the Roses, the English Civil War, the Industrial Revolution, and 2 world wars. He'd fought at Normandy, Omaha Beach, June 6, 1944, the kind of battle where men became legends or corpses, and there wasn't much difference between the two. He'd told Alessa that story once, late night in his study, her running financial projections while he reviewed acquisition targets. He'd been drinking a vintage O-negative from a crystal tumbler. She'd been drinking Earl Grey tea. I was already 400 years old, he'd said, staring at nothing. I'd seen empires rise and fall, watched plague wipe out a third of Europe, survived 3 assassination attempts by werewolf packs and one very determined witch coven. But Omaha Beach... He'd paused, taken a sip. That was the first time I understood what it meant to be human. To run toward death, knowing you probably wouldn't come back. Your mother had that same courage, that same impossible, idiotic bravery. Alessa had never forgotten that conversation. Now, standing in the kitchen with broken porcelain at her feet and her hands bleeding into the sink water, she met Dante's eyes. They glowed. Faint crimson luminescence, the kind of detail that reminded you he wasn't human, that 6 centuries separated them, that he could snap her neck before she registered the movement. He didn't. Instead, he glided closer, moved like water, like shadow, like something that had forgotten how to be mortal so long ago that walking like a human required conscious effort. He stopped 3 feet away, studied her. His gaze catalogued everything. The bruise, the raw hands, the way she was swaying on her feet like a boxer in the 12th round. "Alessandra Graves," he said. His voice was low, smooth, British accent refined over centuries. "Why are you doing the scullery maid's job at 3 o'clock in the morning when you should be sleeping before your calculus exam?" Alessa's throat was dry. She tried to swallow, failed. "Mr. Voss asked me to cover for the night staff, sir." Harrison Voss. Dante's expression didn't change, but something in his tone shifted, went cold. "My chief financial officer. The man who has managed my household for 250 years. That Harrison Voss asked you, my junior financial auditor, to wash dishes in the middle of the night." "Yes, sir." "On a school night?" "Yes, sir." Dante took another step. Close enough now that Alessa could smell him. Old books, expensive cologne, something metallic underneath. Blood, not hers, never hers. Dante fed from willing donors, humans who signed contracts in exchange for money, and the kind of rush that came from being prey to something that could kill you with a thought. "You're shaking," Dante observed. Clinical, detached, the way a surgeon might note a symptom. He reached out, took her chin in his hand. His skin was cold, not corpse cold, just absent of warmth, like touching marble. He tilted her face up, toward the harsh LED light. The bruise. He saw it now, really saw it. The shape of 5 fingers, the pressure points where knuckles had connected with bone. Something happened to Dante's face. A micro-expression, muscles tightening around his jaw, eyes narrowing. The kind of rage that didn't shout, that didn't need to. "Who?" His voice dropped an octave. The temperature in the kitchen fell 10 degrees. Frost formed on the edges of the industrial sink. "Hit you." Alessa pulled her face away from his grip, looked down. "Nobody, sir. I fell during gym class. Volleyball." Liar. The word wasn't angry, just factual. Dante had 600 years of experience detecting lies, reading micro-expressions, measuring heartbeats. He could hear the way her pulse jumped when she spoke, smell the cortisol spike that came with deception. Who hit you, Alessa? And why are you washing dishes instead of auditing the Henderson Group merger like I assigned you 3 days ago? Alessa's hands were still in the sink, still submerged in water that had gone from scalding to lukewarm. She stared at them, at the way the skin had pruned, cracked, started bleeding around the cuticles. I got expelled from St.
Jude's, she said quietly, 3 days ago. The silence that followed was absolute. Dante processed the information. His face was unreadable now, locked down. The mask he wore when playing poker with werewolf pack alphas, when negotiating with witch covens, when deciding whether someone lived or died. Expelled, he repeated. For what? Alessa looked up, met his eyes. Theft, sir. They said I stole a sapphire bracelet from Scarlet Ironwood. They found it in my gym locker. Scarlet Ironwood. Dante's expression was arctic now. Daughter of Moira Ironwood, alpha of the northeastern werewolf territories. Yes, sir. And you stole from her? No, sir. Alessa's voice was steady now, clear. The same tone she used when presenting audit findings. Facts, just facts. I didn't take it, but the headmaster said that humans like me always get greedy around high-value targets. He said it was statistically probable. He expelled me on the spot. Dante was quiet for 5 seconds, then 10.
His mind was working, calculating, running probabilities the way Alessa ran financial models. So you were expelled, he said slowly, and you didn't tell me because you knew it would complicate the blood oath I made to your mother. You didn't tell your grandfather because you knew it would break his heart. Instead, you told Harrison Voss. And Harrison, being the compassionate soul that he is, decided to blackmail you into free labor in exchange for his silence. It wasn't a question. Alessa nodded. Dante looked at the pile of dirty dishes, at the mountain of copper pots, at the girl with bleeding hands who'd been scrubbing porcelain for 3 days straight because a man who'd lived for 2.5 centuries had decided that exploiting a 17-year-old was an acceptable use of his time.
How much is he charging you? Dante asked.
Sir? For his silence. How much does Harrison want in exchange for not telling me you were expelled? Alessa's laugh was bitter, cracked. He's not charging money, sir. He's taking my tuition reimbursement. The $50,000 you pay annually for St. Jude's. He said since I'm not going to school anymore, that money should go back into the household budget. He said I need to earn my keep. 12 hours of work for every $1,000.
He calculated it down to the minute.
600 hours. 50 days of 12-hour shifts, all because Harrison Voss had decided that a blood oath meant nothing when profit was involved. Dante stared at her. Something was happening behind his eyes, some calculation, some decision being made in real time. Leave the dishes, he said. But Mr. Voss said if I don't finish the copper pots by dawn, he'll dock my grandfather's salary. I don't care what the hired help said.
Dante's voice boomed, rattled the plates, made the copper pots ring like bells.
Go to bed, Alessandra. Tomorrow, you and I are going to St. Jude's Academy. Alessa blinked. Sir, you can't go there. School hours are during the day. Dante smiled, showed teeth, fangs, the kind of expression that made it very clear why his enemies didn't stay enemies for long. For you, little one, I'll buy a very large umbrella. Alessa didn't sleep. She lay in her bed in the servants' quarters. A small room, clean but cramped. One window that overlooked the garden. Posters on the wall from college accounting conferences. A bookshelf crammed with textbooks, financial derivatives, forensic accounting, military strategy guides that her grandfather had given her. Her laptop sat open on her desk, screen glowing blue in the darkness. She'd been running the numbers for 3 days, ever since Harrison Voss had called her into his office with that smile. That goddamn smile.
The $50,000 discrepancy wasn't a discrepancy. It was a test.
Voss had created the transfer, used a ghost account, routed it through 3 shell companies, left a digital trail that led back to Alessa's login credentials. It was sophisticated, professional. The kind of forgery that required someone with decades of experience in financial systems, someone like Harrison Voss. But why? Alessa stared at her laptop screen, at the spreadsheet she'd been building. Transaction histories going back 5 years, 7 years, 10. There. A pattern. Small amounts, 5,000 here, 8,000 there. Never enough to trigger automated audits, never frequent enough to establish a rhythm, but consistent, methodical, like clockwork, hidden behind statistical noise. Alessa pulled up another file: wire transfers, offshore accounts, banks in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Singapore. She created a pivot table, sorted by date, by amount, by routing numbers. The pattern became clearer. Harrison Voss had been stealing from Dante Ashwood for 20 years, maybe longer. Small amounts that added up to, she ran the calculation, $12 million. No, wait, she'd missed a cluster. Transactions coded as estate maintenance. She pulled those records, ran them through her fraud detection algorithm. Not 12 million, $50 million. $50 million. Stolen over the course of 250 years. Hidden in expense reports and capital improvements, and investment losses that were actually gains funneled into private accounts. Alessa sat back. Her hands were shaking again, not from exhaustion, from the magnitude of what she was looking at. Harrison Voss wasn't just a thief. He was an architect, a patient, methodical criminal who'd spent 2.5 centuries building a fortune on Dante Ashwood's money. The question was why? And why now? Why frame Alessa? Why expose himself with such an obvious move, unless it wasn't about the money at all? Alessa opened a new browser tab, typed in Ashwood Enterprises recent acquisitions. 3 results, all from the last 6 months. Manhattan Shipping Terminals, $40 million purchase. Upstate New York Pharmaceutical Research Facility, $60 million. Controlling interest in Northeast Supernatural Council. Political capital worth, she couldn't even calculate it. Dante was consolidating power, expanding territory, making moves that would shift the balance of supernatural politics across 3 states. And Harrison Voss was bleeding him dry from the inside. A knock on her door made Alessa jump. "It's 4:30. Her grandfather's voice came through the wood. "You should be sleeping." Alessa closed her laptop. "Come in, Grandpa." The door opened. Colonel Thaddeus Graves stood in the doorway. 6'1", broad shoulders, 78 years old, but built like a man 20 years younger. Grey hair cut military short. Eyes that missed nothing. He wore flannel pajamas and slippers, but even in sleepwear he stood like a soldier. Back straight, weight balanced, ready. "Dante told me what happened," Thaddeus said. He stepped into the room, closed the door, sat down on the edge of her bed. "About Voss, about the dishes, about the bruise." Alessa touched her cheek, winced. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I should have told you. I didn't want you to worry." "Graves women don't apologize for being strong," Thaddeus said. His voice was rough, gravelly. Korean winter was still in his throat after all these years. "They apologize for not asking for help when they need it." "I can handle Voss." "I know you can. You're smart, smarter than me, smarter than your mother. Hell, probably smarter than Dante himself. But intelligence isn't the same as experience, and Voss has 250 years of experience lying to people who trust him." Thaddeus reached over, opened her laptop, looked at the spreadsheet on the screen. His expression didn't change, but Alessa saw his jaw tighten. 50 million, he said quietly. Jesus Christ. "I found the pattern tonight, while I was washing dishes. I kept thinking about the numbers, about why Voss would risk exposing himself over 50,000 when he'd been stealing millions. It didn't make sense, so I ran the deep audit. And he's not trying to hide anymore. He's accelerating. The 50,000 wasn't embezzlement, it was bait. He wanted me to find it, wanted me discredited, expelled, pushed out of Ashwood Enterprises before I could find the real theft." Thaddeus was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the garden where the first hint of dawn was turning the sky from black to navy blue. "Your mother died 5 years ago,"
he said. She took a bullet for Dante Ashwood. 3 rounds to the chest. Kevlar stopped 2. The third one, it didn't. She bled out in 7 minutes. I held her hand the whole time. She made me promise 2 things. He turned around, looked at Alessa. First, that I'd make sure you got educated. Real education. The kind that would let you survive in any world, human or supernatural. Second, that I'd make sure Dante kept his word. That blood oath wasn't a favor. It was a debt. Your mother bought Dante's life with her own. He owes us. He owes you. Thaddeus walked back to the bed, sat down again, took Alessa's damaged hands in his own. Tomorrow, when you go to that school, I want you to remember something. You're not begging for your place back. You're not asking permission. You're collecting a debt. Harrison Voss tried to steal from you, from Dante, from everyone who trusted him. And you're going to show that bastard exactly what happens when someone underestimates a Graves. Alessa felt tears burning behind her eyes. She blinked them back. Graves women didn't cry. How, Grandpa? I'm 17. I'm human. I don't have power. I don't have leverage. All I have is numbers on a spreadsheet. Thaddeus smiled, the same smile he'd worn when she was 8 years old and couldn't hit the tin can. When she was 12 and couldn't solve the logistics problem he'd given her. When she was 15 and thought she'd never understand how to read a balance sheet. Numbers are the only power that matters, kid. Wars are won with logistics. Empires fall because of cash flow. Voss thinks he's been smart for 250 years, but he's been sloppy, and you caught him. That's not luck, that's competence. And competence is the only currency that matters in this world or any other. He stood up, headed for the door, paused with his hand on the knob. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we go to war, and Graves go to war prepared. Dante Ashwood stood in his study, 3 floors up, corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows that faced east, blackout curtains drawn against the approaching dawn. He held a phone to his ear, waited through 2 rings. A voice answered, male, deep, tinged with an accent that was older than English itself. Dante, it's 4:45 in the morning. This better be important. I need you to pull the full financial history on Harrison Voss, Dante said. Everything, every account, every transaction, every company he's ever worked for. Go back to 1774 if you have to. Silence on the other end. Then, Voss, your CFO Voss, the man who's been with you for 2.5 centuries. The same. What did he do? He made the mistake of thinking I wouldn't notice when he hurt someone under my protection. More silence. The voice on the other end belonged to Kyle Mordecai, Shadow Demon, the best investigator in the supernatural world, the kind of specialist you called when you needed to find things that didn't want to be found. How deep do you want me to go? Kyle asked. Bedrock. I want to know who his parents were, who he worked for before me, every enemy he's ever made, every debt he's ever owed, every secret he's ever kept. That kind of dig takes time. You have 6 hours. Dante. 6 hours, Kyle, before sunrise. I'm going to St. Jude's Academy this morning. I'm going to clear Alessandra Graves' name. And when I come back, I want to know exactly why Harrison Voss decided that destroying a 17-year-old girl was worth risking 250 years of my trust. Dante hung up, set the phone down on his desk. He walked to the window, drew back the curtain just enough to see the garden. The first light of dawn was painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. He hated sunrise, hated the way it burned, hated the weakness it represented. 600 years, and he still couldn't stand in direct sunlight without his skin blistering. But for Alessa, he would. Her mother, Catherine Graves, had been his head of security for 7 years, the best he'd ever employed. Former Marine Corps, Force Recon, the kind of soldier who understood that violence was a tool, not an emotion. She'd saved his life 4 times. The 5th time, she'd died doing it. Parking garage, downtown Manhattan, 3 werewolf assassins. Catherine had pushed him behind a concrete pillar and drawn her sidearm. She'd killed 2 of them before the 3rd one got a shot off. 3 rounds, center mass. Dante had killed the 3rd assassin,
torn his throat out with his bare hands, held Catherine while she bled. "My daughter," she'd whispered, blood on her lips. "Promise me, college, real education." "She's smart, Dante. Smarter than me. Don't let her end up washing dishes in someone's kitchen." "I swear it on my blood," Dante had said. And now, 5 years later, Alessandra Graves had been washing dishes in his kitchen. At 3 o'clock in the morning, with hands so damaged they'd need a week to heal. Because Harrison Voss had decided that a blood oath was negotiable. Dante's phone buzzed. Text message. From Kyle. "Found something. Calling in 2 minutes." Dante waited. The phone rang. He answered. "Talk to me." Harrison Voss, Kyle said, was born in 1724, London, son of a merchant banker named Cornelius Voss. Cornelius worked for House Ashwood, your great-great-grandfather's estate manager. "I know this already." "Right, but here's what you don't know. Cornelius Voss was executed for embezzlement in 1748. Your great-great-grandfather hanged him publicly, made an example, froze all Voss family assets, left Harrison's mother and sisters destitute." Dante went very still. Harrison never mentioned this. Because Harrison spent the next 270 years climbing back from nothing. He worked for 17 different noble houses, fired from 11 of them for financial irregularities, hired by you in 1774, right after the Boston Tea Party. You were expanding into the American colonies. You needed someone who understood British and American financial systems. "And I trusted him," Dante said quietly, "for 250 years. Yeah, and according to the deep records I just pulled from Luxembourg banking archives, Harrison's been bleeding you for at least 200 of those years. $50 million, spread across 83 accounts, all of them coded to look like legitimate business expenses." Dante's hand tightened on the phone. The plastic creaked. "There's more," Kyle said. "I found communications, encrypted emails, between Harrison and someone named Magnus Corvus." Magnus Corvus. The name hit Dante like a fist. 300 years ago, Magnus Corvus had been his mentor, his friend, the vampire who turned him, who taught him how to survive in a world that wanted him dead. They'd had a falling out. 1862, Gettysburg. Magnus had wanted to sell weapons to both sides, Confederate and Union, profit from the bloodshed. Dante had refused. They'd fought, nearly killed each other. They'd been enemies ever since. "What kind of communications?" Dante asked. "Financial data, shipping schedules, security protocols, everything Magnus would need to know to hit you where it hurts." Most recent email was 3 days ago. Subject line, "The girl found the pattern, proceeding to phase 2. Phase 2. The girl. Alessandra." Dante's eyes bled to full crimson. The windows in his study cracked. Not broke, just fractured. Spiderweb patterns radiating out from the center. "Harrison Voss has been working for Magnus Corvus," Dante said. Each word was carved from ice. "He's been my CFO for 250 years, and the entire time he's been a spy." Looks that way. And the bracelet, the theft accusation, getting a lesser expelled, that was all part of Magnus's plan. That's my assessment. Discredit the girl, remove her from your household, leave you vulnerable. Magnus has been planning this for years, maybe decades, using Voss as the inside man. Dante was quiet for 10 seconds. 20. When he spoke again, his voice was completely calm. The kind of calm that preceded hurricanes. "I want everything on Magnus Corvus. Current location, holdings, allies. I want to know what he's planning and when he's planning to do it. I'll have preliminary findings in 4 hours." "Good. And Kyle?" "Yeah? When this is over, Harrison Voss is going to wish his father had taught him a very important lesson about working for House Ashwood."
What lesson?
"We pay well, we treat our people fairly, and we never, ever forgive betrayal." Dante hung up. He stood in his study, watched the sunrise paint the world in colors he couldn't enjoy. Harrison Voss had made a mistake, a catastrophic, fatal mistake. He'd hurt Alessandra Graves. He'd violated a blood oath. He'd betrayed 250 years of trust.
And worst of all, he'd underestimated exactly what Dante Ashwood was willing to do to protect the people he'd sworn to defend. Tomorrow, they would go to St. Jude's Academy. They would clear Alessa's name. They would expose Scarlett Ironwood and her mother, and every person who'd participated in this farce. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, Dante had a different task. He walked to his desk, opened the bottom drawer, pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a medal, bronze, star-shaped. Ribbon faded from red, white, and blue to something closer to rust and ash and memory. Bronze Star, awarded for heroic service during the Normandy invasion, June 6, 1944. He'd been 420 years old when he'd stormed that beach. Old enough to know better, old enough to stay home, old enough to let the humans fight their own wars. But he'd gone anyway, because some things mattered more than age, more than power, more than immortality. Honor mattered. Duty mattered. Protecting the people who couldn't protect themselves mattered. Catherine Graves had understood that. She died for it. Her daughter understood it too, even if she didn't know it yet. Dante closed the box, put it back in the drawer. Harrison Voss thought he was fighting a financial war, an espionage game, something that could be won with patience and planning and 250 years of inside information. He was wrong. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about territory. It wasn't about power. This was about a 17-year-old girl washing dishes with bleeding hands because someone had decided she didn't matter. And Dante Ashwood was going to teach Harrison Voss exactly what happened when you made that particular mistake. The sun rose over Ashwood Manor, light flooded the gardens, turned the dew to diamonds, painted the world in gold and promise. Dante closed the curtains, shut out the light. In 6 hours, he would face the sun itself, would burn for the privilege of defending a blood oath. But first, he needed to make a phone call. He picked up his phone, dialed a number from memory. 3 rings. A voice answered. Female, sharp, British accent that made Dante's sound common by comparison. Dante, what fresh hell requires my attention at this ungodly hour? I need a favor, Moira. Moira Thornwood, Alpha of the Northeastern Werewolf Territories, mother of Scarlett Ironwood, the woman whose daughter had put a bruise on Alessandra Graves' face. A favor, Moira repeated. From you. After 300 years of territorial disputes, this should be entertaining. Your daughter assaulted a member of my household, framed her for theft, got her expelled from St. Jude's Academy. Silence on the other end. Then, very carefully, I'm listening. I'm coming to St. Jude's tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'm bringing Alessandra Graves. We're going to have a conversation with Headmaster Grimwald. I'm going to clear her name, and I'm going to make sure everyone understands exactly what happens when someone violates a blood oath. And you're calling me because? Because your daughter is involved. Because if this goes badly, it becomes a political incident. House Ashwood versus the Northeastern Territories. I don't want a war, Moira, but I will have one if that's what it takes. More silence. Dante could hear Moira thinking, calculating, running scenarios. What do you want from me? She asked, finally. I want you at St. Jude's, 9:15. You're going to watch me clear that girl's name, and then you're going to discipline your daughter appropriately, in front of witnesses. Or I'm going to do it for you, and neither of us wants that. You're threatening an Alpha's child. I'm protecting my own. There's a difference. Your daughter hit a 17-year-old human hard enough to leave a bruise. In my world, that's assault. In your world, that's weakness. An Alpha who can't control her transformation. An Alpha who uses superior strength against someone defenseless. That's not dominance, Moira. That's cowardice. The silence this time was absolute. Dante had just insulted Moira Thornwood's daughter to her face, had called Scarlett Ironwood a coward. It was a calculated risk. Either Moira would agree to discipline Scarlett publicly, or she would declare war. 9:15, Moira said finally. I'll be there, but Dante? Yes? If you're wrong about this, if your girl actually did steal that bracelet, if this is some kind of power play,
Then you can kill me yourself, Dante said. I'll kneel, right there in Grimwald's office, and you can do whatever you want. You'd stake your life on a 17-year-old human's word? I'd stake my life on Catherine Graves' daughter's honor. Yes, without hesitation.
Moira was quiet for 5 full seconds. 9:15, she said. Don't be late. She hung up. Dante set the phone down, looked at the clock. 5:47 a.m. In 3 hours and 13 minutes, he would walk into sunlight, would drive to St. Jude's Academy in a blacked-out limousine with military-grade window tinting, would face down a demon headmaster, a werewolf alpha, and 250 years of his own misplaced trust. But first he needed to check on Alessa. He left his study, moved through the manor. Servants were starting to wake, kitchen staff preparing breakfast, security changing shifts. The manor was coming alive the way it did every morning. Dante descended the servants' stairs, moved quietly, old habit from centuries of hunting. He reached Alessa's door, pressed his ear against the wood. Heartbeat, slow, steady, sleep. Good, she needed rest, needed time to heal. Tomorrow would be hard, would require strength she didn't know she had. But she was a Graves. And Graves women, Dante was learning, were made of something harder than steel, stronger than stone. They were made of the same thing Catherine Graves had been made of: honor, duty, and the absolute refusal to break. Dante turned away from the door, headed back upstairs. He had work to do, calls to make, plans to finalize. Harrison Voss thought he'd won, thought he'd successfully removed Alessandra from the equation, thought he'd cleared the path for Magnus Corvus to make whatever move he was planning. He was wrong, because tomorrow at 9 a.m. Dante Ashwood was going to war, and this time he wasn't going alone. This time he had a 17-year-old financial prodigy with bleeding hands and a grandfather who'd fought in Korea, and a blood oath that meant more than 250 years of lies. This time he had something Harrison Voss and Magnus Corvus had forgotten to account for. He had family. Human family. Mortal family. The kind of family that didn't last forever. The kind that mattered precisely because it was temporary, precious, irreplaceable. The sun climbed higher. Light spilled across the manor grounds. Dawn became morning, became the beginning of something that would change everything. In her small room in the servants' quarters, Alessandra Graves slept. She dreamed of numbers, of spreadsheets, of patterns hidden in financial chaos. She didn't know it yet, but tomorrow she would use those numbers to start a war. And before it was over, she would teach the supernatural world a lesson it would never forget. That competence wasn't a gift, it was a weapon, and Alessandra Graves had just learned how to use it. The limousine was a fortress on wheels, military-grade blackout tinting, bulletproof glass 3 inches thick, interior lined with lead sheeting that blocked UV radiation like a coffin built for daylight travel. The engine was a modified V12 that could outrun most police vehicles and some small aircraft. Dante Ashwood sat in the back seat, dressed in a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than most people earned in 6 months. Italian wool, hand-stitched, the kind of craftsmanship that took 3 fittings and 8 weeks of patient tailoring. He looked like he was going to a funeral. In a way, he was. Beside him, Alessandra Graves wore her St. Jude's Academy uniform, navy blazer, plaid skirt, white Oxford shirt. The clothes looked wrong on her, too worn. The blazer cuffs were frayed. The skirt hem had been let down twice, leaving ghost lines where previous hemlines had been. Alessa stared out the window, watching Boston pass by in filtered sunlight. Her hands rested in her lap. Someone had bandaged them. White gauze wrapped around her palms. Her fingers stuck out like broken piano keys. In the front seat, behind a privacy partition, Stone drove. Gargoyle. 7 feet tall when he wasn't using a glamour to look human, 300 pounds of living granite. He'd been Dante's driver for 40 years. Before that, he'd been a bouncer. Before that, he'd fought in World War I. Verdun, the Somme, places where men went to die, and Stone went to remind himself why he'd chosen immortality. The partition was down.
Stone's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror every few seconds, checking, always checking. "Boss," Stone said. His voice sounded like gravel being crushed. "We've got a tail. Black SUV. 3 cars back. Been following since we left the manor." Dante didn't turn around. "Make and model?" "Escalade. Tinted windows. No plates." "Werewolves or vampires?" "Can't tell from here. Want me to lose them?" "No, let them follow. I want witnesses." Alessa looked at Dante. "Witnesses to what?" "To what happens when someone tries to destroy a blood oath." Dante pulled out his phone, checked the time. 8:47 a.m. "We're early. Good. I want Grimwald off balance. Want him scrambling." "Mr. Ashwood," Alessa said quietly, "I need to tell you something before we get there." "Tell me." She reached into her blazer pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, handed it to him. Dante unfolded it, read. His expression didn't change, but something happened behind his eyes. A calculation, a recalibration. The paper was a bank statement. Luxembourg International Holdings. Account number XXXX-7734-IRON. Deposit $500,000. Date 3 days ago. Memo line. St. Jude's. Special consideration. The account holder was listed as Moira Ironwood. "Where did you get this?" Dante asked. "I hacked the school's financial records last night. After you told me we were going, I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to know exactly who paid to have me expelled." Dante looked at her. Really looked. This 17-year-old girl with bandaged hands and a bruise on her face, who'd spent the night after washing dishes for 3 days straight, breaking into encrypted financial databases. "You hacked St. Jude's financial system," Dante said. "A system designed by witch covens and protected by 3 layers of magical encryption." "The encryption was good," Alessa said, "but it was designed to stop magical attacks, not financial forensics. I used a SQL injection through the donation portal, routed through the school's own VPN. It took me 4 hours, but I got in." Dante smiled. It was a real smile, the kind that showed teeth but no fangs, the kind that suggested he was genuinely impressed. "Your mother," he said, "would be so proud of you right now." Alessa looked away, out the window, blinked hard. Graves' women didn't cry, but sometimes they came close. "Moira Ironwood paid $500,000 to have you expelled," Dante continued. 3 days ago, the same day you were accused of stealing the bracelet, which means this wasn't spontaneous. This was planned, coordinated. "Yes, sir." "And you brought me proof?" "Yes, sir." Dante folded the paper, put it in his inside jacket pocket, right over his heart, where soldiers kept letters from home, where warriors kept talismans against death. "Alessandra Graves," he said, "when we get to St. Jude's, I'm going to do something I haven't done in 600 years.
"What's that, sir?"
"I'm going to let you take the lead. You found the evidence. You did the work. You earned the right to present it. I'm just there to make sure nobody tries to stop you." Alessa stared at him. "You're giving me control of the meeting?" "I'm giving you the respect you've earned. There's a difference." The limousine turned onto Academy Drive. St. Jude's rose ahead of them like a Gothic cathedral. Stone towers, ivy-covered walls, stained glass windows depicting the Great War between warlocks and werewolves from 1500 years ago. Supernatural history written in coloured glass and mortar. The car pulled up to the main entrance, stopped. The engine idled. Stone's voice came through the partition. "Black SUV just pulled in behind us. 4 occupants. I'm reading werewolf heat signatures." "Moira brought backup," Dante said. "Good. I wanted an audience." He looked at Alessa. "Ready?" She took a breath. Let it out slowly. Her grandfather had taught her that. Breathing exercises. Control your breath, control your fear. Control your fear, control the battlefield. "Yes, sir." "Then let's go collect a debt." Stone opened the door. Dante stepped out first, into sunlight. The UV hit him like acid. His skin immediately reddened, started to blister.
But he didn't flinch, didn't step back into the shade. He opened a large black umbrella, golf umbrella-sized. The fabric was woven with silver thread, blessed by 3 different religious orders. It cast a shadow deep enough to protect him from immediate combustion, but it still hurt. Dante extended his hand to Alessa, helped her out of the car. She stood beside him, under the umbrella's shadow. Behind them, 4 werewolves climbed out of the black SUV. 3 men, 1 woman, all wearing expensive suits, all moving with the kind of predatory grace that suggested they could shift forms in under 3 seconds. The woman stepped forward. She was in her early 50s, tall, athletic, hair like spun copper, eyes that were more amber than brown. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit and moved like someone who'd been in command so long she'd forgotten how to take orders. Moira Ironwood, Alpha of the Northeastern Territories. "Dante," she said. Her voice was cool, professional. "You're early." "I'm punctual. There's a difference." Moira's eyes shifted to Alessa, catalogued the bandaged hands, the bruise, the worn uniform. Something flickered across her face. Not quite guilt, but close. "Miss Graves," Moira said, "I understand there's been some confusion regarding my daughter's property." "There's been no confusion," Alessa said. Her voice was steady, clear. "There's been theft, fraud, and assault. The only question is whether you were complicit or just negligent." The 3 male werewolves growled, low, threatening. The sound vibrated in their chests like distant thunder. Dante didn't move, but the air temperature dropped 15 degrees. Moira raised one hand. Her wolves went silent. "Careful, child," Moira said. "You're speaking to an alpha." "I'm speaking to the mother of a girl who hit me hard enough to leave a bruise, who planted evidence in my locker, who destroyed my academic record. Your title doesn't change those facts." Moira studied Alessa for 5 long seconds. Then she smiled. It was a predator's smile, the kind that showed too many teeth. "I think," Moira said, "we should take this inside, before someone says something they can't take back." Headmaster Grimwald's office was designed to intimidate. 20-foot ceilings, dark wood paneling, bookshelves that reached toward the rafters like the ribs of some massive beast. A desk the size of a small car. Windows that looked out over the academy grounds. 300 acres of manicured lawn and ancient trees. Grimwald himself sat behind the desk. Demon, low level, the kind that had enough power to be dangerous but not enough to be important. He looked human, mostly, except for the eyes. They were solid black, no whites, no irises, just obsidian spheres that reflected light like polished stone. He wore a 3-piece suit, wire-rimmed glasses, a pocket watch on a gold chain. He looked like a Victorian banker. He looked at Dante and Alessa like they were overdue payments. "Mr. Ashwood," Grimwald said, "this is highly irregular. You didn't schedule an appointment. You can't simply walk into my office and demand—" "I'm not demanding anything," Dante said. He remained standing, umbrella folded, suit jacket still smoking slightly from the walk across the parking lot. "I'm here to correct an administrative error. 3 days ago, you expelled Alessandra Graves for theft. I'm here to reverse that decision." The decision was made based on evidence. A sapphire bracelet was found in her possession, property of Scarlett Ironwood. "The bracelet was planted," Alessa said. She stepped forward, placed her bandaged hands on Grimwald's desk. "And you know it was planted, because Alpha Ironwood paid you $500,000 to expel me. 3 days ago. Wire transfer. Luxembourg International Holdings. Account number XXXX-7734-IRON. The office went absolutely silent. Grimwald's black eyes widened, just slightly, just enough. Moira Ironwood, standing near the window with her 3 wolves, didn't move. But her scent changed. Dante could smell it. Adrenaline. Cortisol, the chemical signature of someone who'd just been caught. "That's a serious accusation," Grimwald said carefully. "It's a documented fact." Alessa pulled out a flash drive, set it on the desk. "This contains the complete financial records of St. Jude's Academy for the last 6 months, including the $500,000 donation from Moira Ironwood. Memo line,
Special consideration. Dated the same day I was expelled. The same day the bracelet was allegedly found in my locker. She pulled out another flash drive. This contains security camera footage from the hallway outside the girls' locker room. Timestamp. It shows Scarlett Ironwood entering the locker room alone at 11:47 a.m. She was carrying a small box, jewelry-sized. She exited at 11:51, no longer carrying the box. At 11:59, she reported the bracelet stolen. At 12:15, security found it in my gym locker. Alessa placed both flash drives on Grimwald's desk, lined them up, perfect parallel. The timeline is clear. The financial trail is clear. The only unclear thing is whether you're going to admit you took a bribe or whether I'm going to file a formal complaint with the Supernatural Council for Educational Standards and have them audit this entire institution. Dante watched Alessa work, watched her dismantle Grimwald's authority with nothing but facts and evidence and the kind of cold, methodical precision that made accountants more dangerous than soldiers. He'd never been more proud of someone in his life. Grimwald looked at Moira. "Alpha Ironwood, would you like to address these allegations?" Moira stepped forward. She didn't look at Alessa, looked at Dante instead. "The donation was legitimate," Moira said. "St. Jude's was expanding the athletics program. I contributed. The timing was coincidental." "Coincidence?" Alessa's voice was flat. $500,000. Same day your daughter framed me. Same day the headmaster expelled me without investigation, without due process, without even calling my grandfather. That's not coincidence. That's conspiracy. "You're calling an alpha a liar," one of Moira's wolves said. He stepped forward, 6'4", built like a linebacker. "That's a challenge." "No," Alessa said. "It's an audit. There's a difference." She turned to Grimwald. "The Supernatural Council for Educational Standards has very specific rules about conflicts of interest. Faculty members can't accept donations exceeding $100,000 from families with students currently enrolled. The limit exists specifically to prevent what happened here: bribery, favoritism, abuse of power." Grimwald's jaw tightened. "Miss Graves, you're making very serious accusations." "I'm presenting evidence. There's a difference." Alessa pulled out a folder, placed it on the desk. "This is my academic record. 4.0 GPA. Perfect attendance. No disciplinary issues. I was ranked 3rd in my class. Until 3 days ago, when I was expelled without a hearing, without representation, based entirely on the word of a student whose mother had just paid you $500,000. She opened the folder, showed pages, transcripts, test scores, teacher evaluations. Meanwhile, Scarlett Ironwood has a 2.3 GPA. She's failed 3 classes, been written up for fighting twice, and yet she remains enrolled. She remains in good standing. Why? Because her mother is wealthy? Because she's a werewolf? Or because you accepted a bribe? Dante could smell Grimwald's fear now, sharp, acrid, the scent of someone who just realized they'd underestimated their opponent. "The bracelet," Grimwald said, grasping, desperate. "It was found in your locker. You admit that." "I admit that a bracelet was found in my locker, but I can prove it's not Scarlett Ironwood's bracelet." Alessa looked at Dante. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small velvet pouch, handed it to her. She upended the pouch onto Grimwald's desk. A sapphire bracelet spilled out. Cartier. Platinum setting. 12 carats of blue stone that caught the light and threw it back like captured ocean. The room went silent. "This," Alessa said, "is the actual bracelet, the one that's been in Mr. Ashwood's vault for the last 6 months. He acquired it at an estate auction. Provenance documented. Serial number registered." She picked up the bracelet, showed the clasp. There was an engraving, tiny, precise. CA-1887-LON. Cartier, London, 1887. This bracelet is 139 years old. It's a museum piece. Mr. Ashwood paid $60,000 for it at auction. She set it down, pulled out her phone, showed a photograph. "This is the bracelet that was found in my locker. Note the clasp. No engraving. The setting is platinum-plated white gold, not solid platinum.
The sapphires are lab-created, not natural.
This bracelet costs approximately $3,000 retail. You can buy it at Nordstrom. Alessa zoomed in on the photo, showed more detail. It's a good forgery, excellent actually, but it's still a forgery. Someone saw the real bracelet, photographed it, had a replica made, then planted that replica in my locker to frame me. She looked at Moira. The question is who? Who had access to Mr.
Ashwood's vault? Who knew he owned this specific piece?
Who had the resources to commission a $3,000 forgery on short notice? Dante stepped forward. I can answer that. Because I checked my security logs last night. Someone accessed my vault 6 weeks ago, bypassed 3 layers of security, spent 17 minutes inside. Nothing was stolen, but several items were photographed. He pulled out a tablet, showed security footage, grainy, black and white, but clear enough. The figure in the video wore a hooded cloak, moved with purpose, photographed a dozen pieces of jewelry, including the sapphire bracelet. The digital signature on the security bypass traces back to a spell purchased from a witch named Selene Corvus, Dante said, sister of Magnus Corvus, my oldest enemy. The name hung in the air like smoke. Magnus Corvus. Moira's expression changed, not much, but enough. The kind of micro-expression that suggested she recognized the name.
Knew what it meant.
Magnus Corvus, Dante continued, has been trying to undermine my operations for 3 centuries. He's attacked my businesses, sabotaged my political alliances, and apparently he's decided that the best way to hurt me is to go after the people I've sworn to protect. Dante looked at Grimwald. Someone working for Magnus photographed my vault. Someone working for Magnus commissioned the forgery.
And someone working for Magnus convinced Alpha Ironwood that framing a 17-year-old human would somehow serve her interests.
He turned to Moira. The question is whether that someone is you or whether you're just another pawn in Magnus's game. Moira's wolves tensed, ready to defend their alpha, ready to fight. But Moira held up one hand, stopped them. She looked at Dante for a long moment, then at Alessa, then at the bracelet on the desk. I received a letter, she said finally.
6 weeks ago.
Anonymous. It detailed several irregularities in your household, Dante. Financial discrepancies, security breaches. It suggested that you were becoming careless, vulnerable. And you believed an anonymous letter? I verified the information. The financial discrepancies were real. $50,000 missing. Audit trail leading to your household. I assumed, she paused, I assumed you were losing control, that your people were stealing from you. I thought if I could prove it, I could leverage that weakness in our next territorial negotiation. So you paid Grimwald to expel Alessa, to embarrass me, to prove I couldn't even protect my own household. Yes, the admission hung in the air. Dante was quiet for 5 seconds. 10. When he spoke, his voice was calm, reasonable, the kind of calm that preceded executions. Moira Ironwood, you are Alpha of the Northeastern Territories. You command 17 packs. 3,000 werewolves. You have political power I'll never match. But you made a mistake. You attacked a human child under my protection because an anonymous letter told you it would give you leverage. He stepped closer. That letter came from Magnus Corvus, or someone working for him, and you fell for it. You let yourself be manipulated. You sacrificed honor for political advantage, and in doing so, you violated the Treaty of 1894, Article 7, Clause 3. Supernatural entities shall not use mortal proxies to settle disputes between immortal powers. Moira went very still. That's treaty law. Invoking it requires a formal complaint to the Council. Yes, which I'm prepared to file, unless you make this right, here, now, in front of witnesses. The room was silent, except for breathing, heartbeats. the tick of Grimwald's pocket watch. Moira looked at her daughter. Scarlett had appeared in the doorway, 17 years old, beautiful, blonde, wearing a St. Jude's uniform that fit perfectly because it had never been worn more than twice. She looked terrified. "Scarlett," Moira said, "did you plant that bracelet in Alessandra's locker?" Scarlett's eyes went wide. "Mother, yes or no? Someone told me it was a prank. They said it would be funny. They said—" "Who told you?" "I don't know, a letter. It came to the house, it had instructions, it had the bracelet. It said if I did it, you'd be proud of me, that I'd be helping the pack." Moira closed her eyes, took a breath. When she opened them again, she looked at Dante. "I owe you a blood debt," she said. The words came out like they hurt, like pulling shrapnel. "My daughter assaulted a member of your household, framed her for theft, destroyed her academic standing. Under werewolf law, that debt must be paid." "I don't want your blood," Dante said. "I want justice." "Name your terms." Dante looked at Alessa. "She names the terms.
She's the one who was wronged.
Every eye in the room turned to Alessa, the 17-year-old girl with bandaged hands and a bruise on her face and evidence that had just dismantled a conspiracy. She met Moira's eyes, didn't flinch, didn't look away. "I want 3 things," Alessa said. "First, Scarlett Ironwood apologizes, here, now, in front of everyone. Second, Alpha Ironwood returns her $500,000 donation to St. Jude's Academy, every penny, and Headmaster Grimwald uses that money to establish a scholarship fund for human students. Students like me who have to work 3 times as hard to earn half the respect." She paused. "Third, I want Scarlett to understand what it's like to be powerless. I want her to spend 1 month working in the Ashwood Manor kitchens, washing dishes, scrubbing floors, learning what it means to earn your place instead of buying it." The room erupted. Scarlett screamed. Moira's wolves growled. Grimwald stammered something about regulations, but Dante smiled, because Alessa hadn't asked for violence, hadn't demanded vengeance. She demanded something far more devastating. She demanded that Scarlett Ironwood learn humility. "Those terms are acceptable," Dante said. "Moira?" The Alpha looked like she'd just swallowed broken glass, but she nodded. "Acceptable." She looked at her daughter. "Apologize. Now." Scarlett's eyes filled with tears. "Mother, please. Now." Scarlett walked forward, stood in front of Alessa. She was 4 inches taller, 30 pounds heavier, infinitely more powerful. But she looked small. "I'm sorry," Scarlett whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I wanted to make my mother proud." Alessa looked at her for a long moment. "Next time," Alessa said quietly, "try earning her pride instead of buying it." They left St. Jude's Academy at 10:30 a.m. The sun was high, brutal. Dante's skin was blistering even under the umbrella. But he walked Alessa to the car, made sure she was safe inside before he followed. Stone pulled out of the parking lot. The black SUV didn't follow this time. Dante sat back, let out a breath he didn't need. His skin was already healing, regeneration kicking in. By tomorrow, there wouldn't be a mark. "You did well," he said to Alessa. She was staring out the window, silent. "Alessa? I just humiliated the daughter of the most powerful werewolf in 3 states, she said. "I made an enemy of an alpha. I exposed a headmaster. Her voice cracked. "I'm not sure what I just did." Dante reached over, placed his hand on top of her bandaged ones. "You fought back," he said. "You used your mind instead of claws, your evidence instead of strength. You proved that power isn't about who's strongest, it's about who's right." "And what happens when being right isn't enough?" "Then you have me, and your grandfather, and every resource I possess. Because that blood oath I made to your mother? It's not a favor, Alessa. It's a debt, and I pay my debts." Alessa was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mr. Ashwood?" "Yes?" "Why did you really let me take the lead back there? You could have destroyed them yourself. You didn't need me." Dante smiled. "I did need you. Because if I'd destroyed them, it would have been about power, about a vampire king crushing his enemies. But you destroyed them with truth, with evidence, with the kind of competence that can't be argued with. That's worth more than all the supernatural power in the world. He paused. Your mother taught me that. 5 years ago, she was human, mortal, fragile, but she stood between me and 3 werewolf assassins because it was the right thing to do. Not because she was strong enough, but because she was brave enough. And you think I'm like her? I think you're better than her. Because she fought with guns. You fight with spreadsheets. And in the modern world, spreadsheets are far more dangerous. The limousine turned onto the highway, headed back toward Ashwood Manor. Dante pulled out his phone, checked his messages. One new text, from Kyle. Found Magnus. He's hosting the Founders Ball tonight. Grand Hotel Ballroom. 500 guests. Every major supernatural power on the East Coast will be there. Dante showed the message to Alessa. The Founders Ball, he said. The biggest political event of the season. Every clan leader, Pack Alpha, and Coven head in attendance. And Magnus is hosting. That's not a coincidence, Alessa said. No, it's a trap. He's been planning this for months, maybe years. Getting you expelled was just the opening move. He wanted me destabilized, distracted, vulnerable. What's the end game? Dante was quiet for a moment, thinking, calculating. He wants to expose me, Dante said finally. Wants to prove I'm weak, that I can't protect my own household, that I'm unfit to hold my territory. And if he proves that, then the council can vote to remove me, redistribute my holdings. Magnus has been waiting 300 years for that opportunity. Alessa looked at the phone, at the message about the ball. Are you going? Yes, then I'm going with you. Dante turned to look at her. Alessa, this is going to be dangerous. Magnus will have allies there. Werewolves, vampires, witches, everyone who wants to see me fall. If things go badly, then you'll need someone who can audit the room, Alessa interrupted. Someone who can find the financial trails, the connections, the evidence. You fight with power, Mr. Ashwood, but I fight with numbers, and numbers don't lie. Dante studied her. This 17-year-old girl who'd just gone toe-to-toe with an alpha, who'd exposed a conspiracy, who was now volunteering to walk into a ballroom full of predators. Your grandfather will never forgive me if something happens to you, Dante said. My grandfather trained me for this. He taught me that competence is the only currency that matters, that you earn respect by showing up when it's hard, by standing your ground when everyone else runs. She looked at Dante. You kept your blood oath to my mother. You protected me. You gave me the chance to fight back. Now let me return the favor. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. But we're doing this properly. You're not going as a servant. You're going as my protege, my ward. And everyone in that ballroom is going to know that touching you means war. He pulled out his phone, made a call. This is Dante Ashwood. I need a team, full styling, wardrobe, security briefing, and I need it done in 8 hours. We're going to the Founders Ball, and we're making a statement. He hung up, looked at Alessa. Welcome to Supernatural Politics. It's going to be a long night. Ashwood Manor, 4 p.m. The transformation team had taken over the East Wing. 6 stylists, 4 security consultants, 2 weapons specialists, and Colonel Thaddeus Graves. He stood in the center of the organized chaos, watching his granddaughter get measured for a ball gown like she was being fitted for armor, which, in a way, she was. Grandfather, Alessa said. She stood on a raised platform. 3 Fey stylists fluttered around her with measuring tapes and pins. Tell me again about the Korean War. Thaddeus smiled. They played this game since she was 8 years old. He'd tell war stories. She'd listen, learn, extract the lessons hidden in the blood. What do you want to know? How did you survive the Chosin Reservoir? 30 below zero, surrounded, outnumbered 10 to 1. We didn't survive by being strong, Thaddeus said. We survived by being smart. We rationed supplies, built defenses, waited for the enemy to make mistakes, and when they did, We exploited those mistakes with surgical precision. You used their confidence against them. Exactly. The Chinese forces thought we'd freeze, thought we'd panic, but we didn't. We held, and when they overextended, we cut them apart. Alessa was quiet for a moment, processing. "The Founder's Ball," she said. "Magnus is overconfident. He thinks he's already won. He's hosting. He's in control. He's surrounded by allies. Which means he's vulnerable. He's exposed. He's made himself the center of attention. And when you're the center of attention, everyone's watching. Everyone's looking for weakness." Thaddeus's smile widened. "You've been paying attention, and you taught me well." One of the Fey stylists held up a dress, deep crimson, the color of arterial blood, silk, strapless, with a train that would trail behind like a river of red. "This is the one," the stylist said. "She'll look like a queen." "She'll look like a target," Thaddeus said. "Put her in something she can move in, something she can fight in if necessary." The stylist looked offended. "This is high fashion, not combat gear." "Then make it both." The stylist opened her mouth to argue, saw Thaddeus's expression, closed her mouth, started modifying the design. Dante entered the room. He'd changed clothes, black tuxedo, blood-red tie. He looked like he was dressed for either a wedding or a funeral, and it was hard to tell which. "Colonel Graves," Dante said. "A word?" They stepped into the hallway, away from the chaos. "She's going to be in danger tonight," Thaddeus said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "You're going to keep her safe?" "I'm going to try. But Magnus is smart. He's patient. He's been planning this for a long time. I don't know what he's going to do. I just know it's going to be bad." Thaddeus was quiet for a moment. "You know what the worst part about war is? It's not the fighting, it's the waiting, the not knowing, the part where you sit in a foxhole and wonder if the next shell has your name on it." "I know. Alessa's never been in a real fight. She's smart, she's capable, but she's never faced someone who actually wants her dead. I won't let it come to that." "You can't promise that. Nobody can. War doesn't care about promises." Dante looked at the old soldier, saw the fear there, not for himself, for his granddaughter. "I made a blood oath to your daughter," Dante said. "I failed once. I won't fail again." "You didn't fail, Catherine. She made a choice. She stood in front of those bullets knowing exactly what would happen. She chose to die for you. Which is why I owe her. Why I owe you. Why I'll burn that ballroom to the ground before I let anyone hurt Alessa." Thaddeus studied Dante for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, but I'm coming too. You want witnesses? I'll be one. You want backup? I can still shoot straight. Colonel, you're 68 years old, and I've forgotten more about tactics than most people will ever learn. I'm not asking permission, Ashwood. I'm telling you. My granddaughter walks into that ballroom. I'm 3 steps behind her." Dante could have argued, could have pulled rank, could have reminded Thaddeus that supernatural politics wasn't the same as military conflict. But he didn't, because he understood. Thaddeus wasn't asking to go to war, he was asking to protect his family, and that was something Dante could respect. "All right," Dante said, "but you follow my lead. When I say run, you run. When I say fight, you fight. No heroics. No last stands. We get in, we expose Magnus, we get out. And if it goes sideways, then we improvise." Thaddeus smiled, the same smile he'd worn at the Chosin Reservoir, at the Pusan perimeter, at every moment when the situation was impossible and victory required doing the impossible anyway. "I'm good at improvising." 8 p.m., the Grand Hotel. The ballroom was designed to overwhelm. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars, marble floors polished to mirror shine, gold leaf on the columns, artwork worth millions on the walls, 500 guests, vampires in tuxedos, werewolves in evening gowns, witches in robes that shimmered with contained power, fae that looked almost human except for the eyes, the teeth. The way they moved like gravity was optional. Magnus Corvus stood at the center of it all. He was 6'4", silver hair, eyes like frozen lakes. He wore a white tuxedo, stood out like a lighthouse in the sea of black formal wear. He was holding court, laughing, shaking hands, playing the role of gracious host. But Dante could see the calculation in his eyes, the way he watched the entrances, the way he positioned himself with clear sight lines to every exit. Magnus was waiting for something, or someone. The grand doors opened, music swelled, conversation died. Dante Ashwood entered, alone, walking with the kind of confidence that came from 600 years of survival. He descended the marble staircase, slow, deliberate. Every eye in the ballroom turned to watch. Halfway down, he stopped, turned, extended his hand back toward the doorway, and Alessandra Graves stepped into view. The room went silent. She wore the crimson dress, modified, shorter train, reinforced seams, fabric that could survive more than just standing still. Around her neck was a diamond choker, not decorative, protective, spelled by 3 witch covens, blessed by 2 different religious orders, the kind of jewelry that could stop a knife, maybe even a bullet. Her hair fell in dark waves, her hands were no longer bandaged, the skin was still healing, still red and raw, but visible, a reminder. She descended the stairs, one step at a time, Dante's hand steady on hers. They reached the ballroom floor. Conversation erupted, whispers, questions. Who is she? Is that Ashwood's new enforcer? Why is she human? Dante ignored them all, walked Alessa straight toward Magnus. The crowd parted. Nobody wanted to be between a vampire king and his oldest enemy. Magnus smiled when he saw them, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Dante, Magnus said, you brought a guest, how unexpected. Magnus Corvus, Dante said, I'd like you to meet Alessandra Graves, financial auditor, forensic accountant, and the person who's going to expose exactly what you've been doing for the last 300 years. Alessa stepped forward. She wasn't afraid, wasn't intimidated. She pulled out a tablet, turned it on, showed a spreadsheet. $50 million, she said. Her voice carried across the suddenly quiet ballroom. Stolen from Dante Ashwood over 200 years, hidden in offshore accounts, laundered through shell companies, funneled to businesses owned by Magnus Corvus. She swiped, showed another screen. And here's the evidence. Wire transfers, dates, amounts, account numbers, all leading back to one person, Harrison Voss, Dante's chief financial officer. Who's been working for you, Magnus? For how long? 100 years? 200? The room erupted. Not with conversation, with something deeper. Shock, realization. Magnus's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Bold accusations, Magnus said, from a child who doesn't understand supernatural politics. I understand embezzlement, Alessa said. I understand fraud. I understand conspiracy. And I understand that you've been using Dante's own CFO to bleed him dry while you positioned yourself to take his territory. She showed another screen. The Founders' Ball. Tonight, you're hosting. Why? Because you wanted everyone here, every clan leader, every alpha, every power broker on the East Coast. You wanted witnesses when you exposed Dante as weak, as incompetent, as unfit to hold his position. Alessa looked around the ballroom, at 500 pairs of eyes watching her. But you made a mistake, Magnus. You underestimated me. You thought framing me would destabilize Dante. Instead, it motivated him. It made him investigate. It made him dig. And when he dug, we found everything, every theft, every lie, every betrayal. She turned the tablet around, showed it to the crowd. Harrison Voss has been stealing from Dante Ashwood for 2 centuries, and Magnus Corvus has been the beneficiary. That's not politics, that's theft. And under supernatural law, theft between immortals requires restitution, full restitution, plus penalties. Magnus was very still now. The pleasant host mask had slipped. What showed underneath was cold, ancient, dangerous. You think you can accuse me in my own ballroom? Magnus said. His voice was quiet, deadly. You think—" He didn't finish, because at that moment, the lights went out. All of them. Crystal chandeliers, wall sconces, emergency exits.
The ballroom plunged into absolute darkness. And then the screaming started. Green light erupted from the floor, from the walls, from the ceiling. Bane fire, the same kind that had killed vampires for thousands of years. Concentrated wolfsbane and holy water suspended in magical flame. It didn't burn, it dissolved. Vampires screamed. Their skin began to hiss, to blister, to peel away. The doors slammed shut, locked, sealed with magic. 500 supernatural entities, trapped in a ballroom filling with poison. And somewhere in the darkness, Magnus Corvus was laughing. "Welcome to the revolution," his voice echoed. "Tonight the old order dies, and from the ashes something new will rise." Dante grabbed Alessa, pulled her close. His skin was already burning, already dying. "Run," he gasped. "Get to the exits. Find a way out. Don't stop. Don't—" "No," Alessa said. She wrapped her arms around him. "I'm human. The fire doesn't hurt me. But if I leave you, you'll die. Alessa, shut up and let me save you." She pulled off the diamond choker. The protective spells flared, created a barrier, just enough to give them space, just enough to breathe. Around them, the ballroom had become hell. Vampires burning, werewolves trying to shift, witches casting spells that failed in the magical chaos. And at the center of it all, Magnus Corvus stood in his white tuxedo, untouched by the flames. "You wanted to expose me, Dante," Magnus called out. "I'm exposing you, right now, in front of everyone. You're weak. Your household is compromised. Your people betray you, and soon your territory will be mine." Alessa looked at the green flames, at the locked doors, at the 500 people dying, and she saw the pattern. The Bane fire was magical, but magic needed anchors, needed source points. She looked at the floor, saw the symbols, 12 of them, arranged in a circle around the ballroom. "Dante," she said, "the anchors. We need to break the anchors." "How?" "Water. Bane fire is suspended in liquid. If we dilute it—" "The sprinkler system. Can you trigger it?" Dante looked up, at the ceiling, at the hundreds of sprinkler heads designed to protect the hotel. His skin was peeling off his hands, his face. He was dying, but he smiled. "Watch and learn, little one." He raised his hand, summoned 600 years of vampiric power, and he screamed. The sound wasn't human, wasn't even close. It was the sound of a predator, of an apex killer, of something that had survived when empires fell and civilizations died. The sound shattered every sprinkler head in the ceiling. Water rained down, a deluge, a flood, and the Bane fire began to die. The water fell like judgment, 1,000 gallons per minute, cascading from the shattered sprinkler system, turning the Grand Hotel ballroom into a deluge. The Bane fire hissed and sputtered. The green flames fought against the flood. But physics was physics. Magic could bend the rules. It couldn't break them. The fire died, section by section, anchor by anchor. Alessa stood in the center of chaos, water soaking through her crimson dress, diamond choker still glowing with protective magic. She held Dante upright. His skin was healing already, regeneration working overtime. But he was weak, drained. The kind of weakness that came from burning alive and surviving through pure spite. Around them, 500 supernatural entities were scrambling. Vampires recovering from near dissolution, werewolves shaking off the poison, witches trying to re-establish magical control. And at the far end of the ballroom, Magnus Corvus stood on the raised stage. His white tuxedo was drenched, his silver hair plastered to his skull, but he was smiling. "Impressive!" Magnus called out. His voice carried over the sound of rushing water. "You survive everything, don't you, Dante? 600 years, 2 world wars, 3 assassination attempts. And now this. You're like a cockroach, impossible to kill." Dante straightened, pulled away from Alessa's support, stood on his own. Water dripped from his charcoal suit. His skin was still red,
still healing, but his eyes were clear, and they were furious. "You tried to kill 500 people," Dante said.
Each word was carved from ice. Vampires, werewolves, witches, fae.
"You didn't just attack me, Magnus. You attacked the entire supernatural community." "I attacked a broken system," Magnus corrected. "A hierarchy built on lies, on blood oaths and ancient treaties that mean nothing anymore. You represent the old world, Dante, the world where power comes from age, from violence, from fear. I'm offering something better. You're offering chaos. I'm offering evolution."
The ballroom doors burst open, not from inside, from outside. Someone had broken the magical seals. Moira Ironwood entered, followed by 20 werewolves, all in combat formation, all ready to fight. Behind her came other alphas, other pack leaders, drawn by the screams, by the magical surge, by the smell of banefire and terror. Moira saw the destruction, the water, the vampires still healing from near death. "What happened here?" she demanded. "Magnus Corvus tried to assassinate everyone in this room," Dante said,
"Including you. Check your guest list. Were you invited tonight?" Moira's expression changed. She pulled out her phone, checked. "Yes," she said slowly. "Invitation came 3 weeks ago, for the Founders' Ball. I declined because of scheduling conflicts." "And if you'd accepted?" Moira looked at the wet floor, at the remnants of green fire still glowing in the corners,
at the magical anchors that had nearly turned the ballroom into a mass grave.
"I would be dead right now. Along with every other alpha, every pack leader, every vampire clan head, every supernatural authority figure on the East Coast." Dante turned to face the crowd. "This wasn't an attack on me. This was a coup. Magnus wanted to eliminate the entire power structure in one night. And then, in the chaos, he'd step in, offer stability, offer leadership,
Take control of territories that no longer had leaders to defend them."
The crowd erupted, not with panic, with rage. Because Dante was right. The guest list hadn't been random. It had been surgical. Every major power player, every decision-maker, every person who could oppose Magnus's rise, all invited to the same ballroom, all scheduled to die together. "Prove it!" someone shouted from the crowd, a vampire, old, powerful. "Prove Magnus planned this." Alessa stepped forward,
Water dripping from her dress, tablets still clutched in her hands, somehow, impossibly, still functional.
"I can prove it," she said. She tapped the screen, brought up files. "Magnus Corvus purchased the Banefire components 6 months ago, Wolfsbane from a supplier in Romania, holy water from 3 different religious sites. The phosphorus compound was military surplus, World War II vintage, purchased through a shell company registered in Luxembourg." She swiped, showed more data.
The same shell company that employs Harrison Voss, Dante's chief financial officer,
The man who's been stealing from Dante for 200 years while feeding information to Magnus. "Convenient timing," Magnus said from the stage. "You prepare evidence right before an attack. How did you know this would happen?" "I didn't," Alessa said. "But I knew you were planning something. The financial trail was too obvious, too sloppy. You wanted Dante to find the theft, wanted him distracted,
investigating his own household while you prepared this."
She gestured at the ballroom. "You've been planning this for years, decades, positioning pieces, building alliances, all leading to tonight." She showed another screen. Wire transfers, 50 different accounts, all routing money to mercenaries, security consultants, magic suppliers. You spent $40 million preparing for this ball. That's not a party budget, that's a war chest. The crowd pressed closer, wanting to see,
wanting to understand.
Magnus watched Alessa with something like admiration in his eyes. "You're clever," he said, "for a human, for a child. You've put together an impressive case, but you're missing one crucial detail." "What's that?" "I'm not the one you should be worried about." The lights came back on, not the chandeliers, those were broken, but emergency lighting, battery-powered, harsh white LEDs that turned the ballroom into an operating theatre.
And in that light, Standing near the service entrance was Harrison Voss. He wore a tuxedo, looked like any other guest, except for the gun in his hand. A Glock, 19 rounds, standard issue, and it was pointed at Dante's chest. "Hello, old friend," Voss said. His voice was calm, reasonable, the same tone he'd used for 250 years. "I believe we have some unfinished business." Dante went very still. "Harrison, I trusted you." "Yes, you did. For 250 years you trusted me, gave me access to your finances, your household, your secrets. Do you know why? Because you earned it. No, because you're arrogant. You're a 600-year-old vampire who thinks age equals wisdom. But you never learned the most important lesson, the one your great-great-grandfather learned when he hanged my ancestor in 1748. Voss stepped closer. The gun never wavered. "My great-great-grandfather, Cornelius Voss, worked for House Ashwood. He was loyal, competent, trustworthy, until he found evidence that your family was embezzling from the crown, stealing from the very monarchy you claim to serve. He tried to report it, tried to do the right thing. And your great-great-grandfather had him executed for it," Voss continued, "hanged him in public, made an example, destroyed our family's name. My grandmother died in debtor's prison. My aunts were forced into servitude. My mother," he paused, "my mother sold everything we had just to buy me an education, so I could climb back, so I could restore our name." The crowd was silent now, listening. "I worked for 17 different noble houses," Voss said, "learning, studying, perfecting the art of financial management. And then, in 1774, I applied to work for you. Dante Ashwood, grandson of the man who destroyed my family, and you hired me. Because you never even checked, never even cared about who I was. You just saw competence and assumed loyalty." Dante's expression was unreadable. "So you've been stealing from me for 250 years, as revenge?" "No, I've been destroying you for 250 years, piece by piece, dollar by dollar, relationship by relationship. The theft was just the tool. The real goal was watching you realize, at the very end, that you never knew, never suspected, that the person you trusted most was the one bleeding you dry." "And Magnus?" "Magnus understood. He lost someone to your family too, his brother, killed in your little territorial dispute in 1862. We found each other. 2 men with grudges, 2 men with patience. And we've been planning this for 80 years. Voss looked around the ballroom, at the 500 witnesses. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Everyone dies in the fire. Magnus steps in, takes control. But you survived, again, so we adapt. He raised the gun, pointed it at Alessa instead of Dante. "Here's the new plan," Voss said. "Dante Ashwood, you're going to surrender. You're going to sign over your territories, your holdings, your entire empire, or I shoot the girl, right here, right now, in front of everyone." Dante's face went white, not pale, white, the color of bone, of ash, of rage so absolute it transcended expression. "Touch her," Dante said, "and I will erase your bloodline from history." "Tough words from a man who's currently outnumbered," Voss gestured. 20 figures stepped out from the crowd, security personnel, wearing hotel uniforms, all carrying weapons, all pointed at Dante, Magnus's backup plan. "You see," Voss said, "we planned for everything, including your legendary stubbornness. So here's what happens next. You kneel, you submit, or the girl dies. And after her, your precious Colonel Graves. And after him, every single person in this ballroom who ever showed you loyalty." Thaddeus Graves stepped forward from the crowd. He'd been silent, watching, calculating. Now he moved like a soldier, quick, efficient, put himself between Voss's gun and his granddaughter. "You want to shoot someone?" Thaddeus said. "Shoot me. I'm old. I've had my time. But that girl, she's 17. She's got her whole life ahead of her. You kill her, you're not making a point. You're just proving you're a coward." Voss smiled. "Brave words, Colonel, but ultimately meaningless. Dante's going to choose your life
or his empire, her life or his pride. Let's see what 600 years of so-called honor is really worth. Dante looked at Alessa, at Thaddeus, at the gun pointed at the two people he'd sworn to protect. And then he did something nobody expected. He laughed. Not a polite chuckle, a real laugh. Deep, genuine. The kind of laugh that suggested he'd just heard the funniest joke in 600 years. "You think," Dante said, still laughing, "that I'd surrender my empire to save two humans? You really think that's how this works?" Voss's smile faltered. "You made a blood oath. You swore to protect Catherine Graves's family." "I did, and I will. But not by surrendering. By destroying you so completely that your name becomes a cautionary tale." Dante turned to the crowd, to Moira Ironwood, to the other Elfers, to the vampire clan heads, to every authority figure who'd survived the Banefire attack. "I invoke trial by accusation," Dante said. "Ancient law. Harrison Voss stands accused of treason, of theft, of conspiracy to commit mass murder. Under supernatural law, these crimes demand judgment. Immediate judgment, by combat or by trial." The crowd stirred. Trial by accusation was old magic, binding magic, the kind that predated councils and treaties.
It was law written in blood and time.
"You can't," Voss started. "I can," Dante interrupted, "and I am. Harrison Voss, I accuse you of betraying House Ashwood. The penalty is death or submission. Choose your champion. Choose your method, but choose now." Magnus stepped forward. "I'll stand as his champion." "Denied," said a new voice. Everyone turned. A woman had entered through the service doors, tall, ancient, dressed in robes that seemed woven from starlight and shadow. Her eyes were completely white. No pupils, no irises, just luminous white that saw everything. High Priestess Moira. Not Moira Ironwood, Moira Starcrown, the oldest witch in North America, the one who adjudicated disputes between immortals. "Magnus Corvus," she said, her voice echoing with power. "You are co-conspirator. You cannot stand as champion for your own conspiracy. Trial by accusation requires neutral combat, or trial by audit." "Trial by audit?" Alessa whispered to Thaddeus. "Financial combat," her grandfather whispered back. "They audit each other's claims. Whoever has the stronger case wins." Moira Starcrown continued. "Harrison Voss, you are accused of 250 years of treason, of embezzlement, of conspiracy to commit murder. You may defend yourself in one of three ways: trial by combat, trial by audit, or trial by riddle." "Trial by riddle," Voss said. "That hasn't been used in 400 years. Nevertheless, it is law. Choose."
Voss looked at Magnus, at the gun in his hand, at the 20 security personnel who were now surrounded by werewolves and vampires who'd survived his assassination attempt. He was outgunned, outnumbered, out of options. Except one. "Trial by riddle," Voss said. "With one condition: I choose my opponent." "Granted," Moira Starcrown said. "Choose." Voss pointed the gun at Alessa. "Her, the girl. If she wins, I submit. If I win, she dies." And Dante still surrenders his empire to save her life. The ballroom erupted in shouts, protests, but Moira Starcrown raised one hand. Silence fell. "The challenge is issued," she said. "Alessandra Graves, do you accept?" Every eye turned to Alessa, the 17-year-old girl in a soaked crimson dress, with raw hands and a bruise on her face, and absolutely no reason to risk her life in a battle of wits against a 250-year-old vampire. Except one: honor. "I accept," Alessa said. Her voice didn't shake, didn't waver. "On one condition: when I win, Harrison Voss doesn't just submit, he confesses. Every crime, every theft, every betrayal, in front of all these witnesses, and then he faces judgment from the council." Moira Starcrown smiled. It was a terrifying smile, the kind that suggested she'd seen civilizations rise and fall, and this was just another interesting footnote. "Agreed. The trial begins now. 3 riddles, 3 answers. The first to fail loses.
Harrison Voss, as challenger, you present first. Voss holstered his gun, stepped into the center of the ballroom. Water splashed under his feet. My riddle, he said. I am older than empires, younger than yesterday. I cannot be held, yet I hold everything. What am I? Alessa didn't hesitate. Time. You're describing time. Correct. Voss's expression was neutral, professional. Your turn. Alessa stepped forward, stood across from Voss. Water soaking through her shoes, dress weighing her down, but her mind was clear. My riddle, she said. I took 30 pieces of silver to betray a king, but I am not Judas. I build bridges with lies and burn them with truth. What am I? Voss went very still. The riddle wasn't just a riddle, it was an accusation, wrapped in wordplay. A traitor? He said carefully. Too general, Moira Starcrown ruled. Specificity is required. A spy? Closer, but insufficient. Voss's jaw tightened. A saboteur. Correct, Alessa said. Barely. Voss nodded, respect flickering across his face. Round 2. I have no voice, yet I scream. I have no wings, yet I fly. I cannot be caught, yet I trap everyone. What am I? This was harder. Alessa thought, analyzed, broke it down like a financial puzzle. No voice, yet screams. No wings, yet flies. Cannot be caught, yet traps. Rumor, she said. Gossip. The thing that spreads without proof and traps people in its web. Correct. Alessa took a breath. This next riddle needed to be perfect, needed to be something Voss couldn't answer without condemning himself. Round 2, she said. I serve 2 masters with one face. I count money for one while stealing from the other. I smile while I sharpen knives. I am trusted by both, loyal to neither. What am I? The crowd murmured, because the riddle wasn't subtle. It was a direct description of Harrison Voss himself. Voss knew it. Everyone knew it. A double agent, he said. Too broad, Moira Starcrown said. Be specific. A traitor. Already used, try again. Voss's expression cracked, just slightly. An embezzler. Insufficient. The riddle describes someone who serves 2 masters. Embezzlement is one crime. The riddle implies 2. A spy and a thief. Combined answer. Acceptable. Moira Starcrown looked at both combatants. Final round. Winner takes all. Voss's turn. He needed something impossible. Something a 17-year-old human couldn't possibly know. My final riddle, he said. I was there when Dante's great-great-grandfather killed my ancestor. I was there when empires fell and new ones rose. I witnessed the signing of the Treaty of Westphalia and the fall of Constantinople. I am not immortal, yet I never die. What am I? It was a riddle about legacy, about bloodlines, about the concept of inherited memory. Alessa closed her eyes, thought. Her grandfather had taught her about legacy, about how some things transcend individual lives. History, she said. You're describing history, the record, the memory, the thing that doesn't die because it's written down, passed on, remembered. Correct. The crowd was silent, tense. This was it. Final riddle, final answer. Winner determined everything. Alessa looked at Voss, at this man who'd spent 250 years planning revenge, who'd stolen $50 million, who'd tried to kill 500 people. And she saw the pattern. Everything Voss had done, he'd done for family, for legacy, for the grandfather who was hanged unjustly. So she gave him a riddle about exactly that. My final riddle, Alessa said. I am the weight that fathers carry, the debt that sons inherit. I cannot be paid with gold or blood, only with time and tears. I make monsters of good men and heroes of broken ones. What am I? Voss stared at her, because he knew. They both knew. The answer was guilt, inherited guilt, the burden of family shame, the thing that had driven him to spend 2.5 centuries destroying Dante Ashwood. But if he answered correctly, he'd be admitting that his entire crusade was built on something as human as inherited trauma, as mortal as family shame. If he answered wrong, he lost everything. "Time's running out, Harrison," Moira Starcrown said. "Answer or forfeit." Voss looked around the ballroom, at Magnus, at the 500 witnesses, at Alessa standing in her soaped dress with her raw hands and her unshakable conviction. "I don't know," he said finally. The words fell like stones. "Then you lose," Moira Starcrown declared. "Alessandra Graves wins by intellectual superiority. Harrison Voss, you are bound by the terms of trial by riddle. Confess your crimes, all of them, now." Voss stood there, water dripping, gun useless at his hip. 250 years of planning unraveling.
"I stole $50 million from Dante Ashwood," he said. His voice was mechanical, forced. The magic of the trial compelled truth. "I falsified financial records. I sold estate secrets to Magnus Corvus. I framed Alessandra Graves to discredit Dante's household. I helped plan the Banefire attack intended to kill everyone in this ballroom." "Why?" Dante asked. "Because your great-great-grandfather killed mine, hanged him for trying to expose corruption, destroyed my family, left us with nothing. I wanted you to know what it felt like, to lose everything, to be betrayed by the person you trusted most." "And Magnus?" Voss looked at Magnus Corvus. "We met 60 years ago, at a bar in London. We were both drinking, both angry, both carrying grudges. We realized we wanted the same thing, your destruction. So we planned. For 60 years we planned. Every detail, every contingency. The endgame? Kill you at the Founders' Ball. Kill everyone with authority. In the chaos, Magnus would step in, offer stability, take control of the East Coast territories, and I'd become his CFO, his right hand. We'd rebuild the supernatural world, without blood oaths, without ancient hierarchies, something new. "Something corrupt," Dante said. "Something honest," Voss corrected. "At least we'd be honest about our greed, not hiding it behind honor and duty and blood oaths that mean nothing." Dante walked toward Voss, stopped 3 feet away. "Blood oaths mean everything," Dante said quietly. "I made one to Catherine Graves. I kept it. Even when it was hard, even when it was inconvenient. Because a man is only as good as his word. You spent 250 years proving that revenge is empty, that grudge is poison, that you can't build anything lasting on hatred." He turned to Moira Starcrown. "What's the judgment for conspiracy to commit mass murder?" "Death," she said. "Or exile, council's choice." "I want exile. Send him somewhere he can think about what he's lost, what he's thrown away. Let him spend the next 200 years understanding that revenge didn't heal anything. It just made him empty." Moira Starcrown nodded. "So ordered. Harrison Voss, you are exiled from North America. You have 72 hours to leave the continent. If you return, the penalty is death. Immediate, irreversible." Voss looked at Dante. For a moment, something like regret crossed his face. "I almost respected you," Voss said, "for keeping that blood oath, for actually caring about a human family." "The respect was mutual," Dante said, "until you betrayed it." Security personnel appeared, not Magnus's people, council enforcers. They took Voss by the arms, led him away. Magnus Corvus watched from the stage. His white tuxedo was ruined, his plan was in shambles, his co-conspirator was exiled, but he was still free. Dante turned to face him. "Your turn, old friend. What's your judgment going to be?" "I didn't kill anyone," Magnus said. "I planned to, but the Banefire didn't work. Nobody died. Under supernatural law, you can't punish intent, only action. You tried to commit mass murder. I tried to start a revolution. There's a difference, and last I checked, revolutions aren't illegal, just unpopular." Moira Starcrown stepped forward. "He's right. Legally, intent to commit murder isn't the same as murder. Without bodies, there's no crime." "Then what's the penalty?" Dante demanded. "Banishment from council proceedings for 100 years. He keeps his territories, his holdings, but he has no political voice, no vote, no influence." Magnus smiled.
I can live with that. But, Moira Starcrown continued, there's still the matter of the financial conspiracy, the stolen $50 million. That's a civil matter. Dante Ashwood, you can sue for restitution in supernatural court with full council oversight.
Dante looked at Alessa. What's your recommendation?
Sue for triple damages, Alessa said immediately. 50 million stolen becomes 150 million owed, plus legal fees, plus interest calculated at the supernatural standard rate of 8% annually for 200 years. She pulled out her tablet, did the math in real time. Total amount owed, $473 million. Payable immediately or through asset seizure. The crowd gasped.
Because that wasn't a fine. That was obliteration.
Magnus would have to liquidate everything. Territories, businesses, holdings, everything he'd built over 300 years. He'd survive, but he'd be poor, powerless, irrelevant. Magnus's smile disappeared. You can't. I can, Dante said. And I will. You wanted to destroy me, Magnus. You almost succeeded, but you forgot one crucial detail. I don't fight alone anymore. I have people. Human people. Mortal people. People who understand that competence matters more than power. That honor matters more than age. That loyalty isn't bought. It's earned. He gestured to Alessa, to Thaddeus. You underestimated them, and that was your fatal mistake. Moira Starcrown raised her staff. Magic flared. So ordered. Magnus Corvus owes Dante Ashwood $473 million in restitution. Asset seizure begins immediately. This council is adjourned. The ballroom erupted in conversation.
Werewolves and vampires and witches all talking at once. Processing. Understanding. The old order hadn't fallen, but it had changed. Dante Ashwood turned to Alessa, and then, in front of 500 witnesses, he did something he'd never done in 600 years. He knelt. One knee on the wet marble floor, head bowed. Alessandra Graves, he said. His voice carried across the silent ballroom. You saved my life tonight, not with strength, not with power, but with intelligence, with courage, with the kind of honor your mother carried. I owe you a debt I can never repay, but I can give you this. He pulled something from his jacket, a small wooden box, opened it. Inside was a medal, bronze, star-shaped, ribbon faded but still recognizable. This is my bronze star, Dante said. Awarded June 6th, 1944. Omaha Beach. I carried it for 82 years as a reminder of the day I learned what true courage looks like. Humans running toward death because it was the right thing to do. Not because they were strong enough, but because they were brave enough. He held it out. Your mother had that courage. You have it too. This belongs with someone who understands what it means. Alessa took the medal. Her hands were shaking, tears running down her face. Graves women didn't cry, except sometimes they did. Dante stood, placed his hand on her shoulder. The blood oath is paid, he said. But the partnership continues, if you want it. Work for me, Alessa, not as a junior auditor, as my chief financial officer. Replace Voss, help me rebuild, help me create something better than what we had. I'm 17, Alessa whispered, and you just defeated a 250-year-old vampire in intellectual combat. Age is just a number. Competence is what matters. Do you want the job or not? Alessa looked at her grandfather. Thaddeus was smiling. Proud. The same smile he'd worn when she hit the tin can, when she solved the logistics problem, when she became everything he'd trained her to be. Yes, Alessa said, I want the job. 6 months later. Ashwood Manor. The gardens in spring, cherry blossoms falling like snow. The Bronze Star medal sat in a glass case in the manor's great hall. Not in Dante's study, in the public space where everyone could see it. Below the medal was a plaque, engraved brass. It read, Awarded to Dante Ashwood,
June 6, 1944, for valor at Normandy. Gifted to Alessandra Graves, October 15, 2026, for teaching an immortal what courage truly means. Alessa stood in front of the case. She wore a business suit now, tailored, professional, CFO of Ashwood Enterprises, the youngest in supernatural history. Her hands had healed, no scars. Vampire healing magic had fixed the damage completely. But she still remembered what they'd looked like. Raw, bleeding. The price of survival in a world that didn't value her. Until she made it value her. Thaddeus walked up beside her. He moved slower now. The winter had been hard on his knees, but he still stood like a soldier. "Proud of you, kid," he said. "I learned from the best. Your mother would be proud too." "I know." They stood in silence for a moment, looking at the medal, at the legacy it represented. "Grandfather?" Alessa said. "What did you learn from all this?" Thaddeus smiled. "I learned that honor isn't about age. It's about choices, about doing the hard thing when the easy thing is right there. You could have run, could have hidden, could have let Dante fight his own battles. But you didn't. You stood your ground, used your brain, proved that a 17-year-old with a calculator is more dangerous than a 600-year-old vampire." And what did Dante learn? He learned that in 600 years of existence, the truest loyalty comes not from fear or magic or blood oaths. It comes from showing up, from keeping promises, from treating people like they matter. Alessa was quiet for a moment. Then, "What did I learn?" "What did you learn?" "I learned that competence is a weapon, that numbers don't lie, that you can fight empires with spreadsheets if you're smart enough. And I learned that sometimes the person society calls just a kid is the only one strong enough to fix what's broken." Thaddeus put his arm around her shoulders. "That's my girl." Dante appeared in the doorway. He was holding financial reports, always working, always building. "Alessa," he said, "we have a problem with the Henderson acquisition. The numbers aren't adding up." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where someone's trying to hide a $15 million discrepancy in the real estate valuation." Alessa smiled. "Give me 2 hours. I'll find it." "I know you will." Dante looked at the bronze star medal, at the plaque beneath it. "You know what the best part of being 600 years old is?" he said. "What's that?" "Watching history change, watching the world become something better than it was. I fought at Normandy because I believed humans were worth saving. Your mother died because she believed duty mattered more than survival. And you? You're building something new, something that doesn't rely on age or power or fear. You're building a world where competence matters, where honor matters, where a 17-year-old human can stand toe-to-toe with immortals and win." He paused. "That's the world your mother wanted. That's the world I'm honored to help create." Alessa looked at the three of them. Grandfather, mentor, family. "Then let's get to work," she said. They walked back through the manor, past servants who nodded respectfully, past security personnel who'd learned that the young woman in the business suit was more dangerous than any vampire, past a future that was being written one choice at a time. Because in the end, that was the lesson. Power isn't about immortality, it's about impact. Strength isn't about how long you live, it's about what you do with the time you have. And honor isn't about blood oaths or ancient treaties. It's about a 17-year-old girl with bleeding hands who chose to fight instead of flee, who used intelligence instead of strength, who proved that in a world of monsters, the most dangerous thing you can be is competent. 6 months after the Founders' Ball, Alessandra Graves walked into her office at Ashwood Enterprises. Chief Financial Officer, age 17, the youngest executive in supernatural history. On her desk was a new contract, Henderson Acquisition, $15 million in hidden assets. She opened her laptop, started running the numbers, and somewhere in the manor, Dante Ashwood smiled, because he'd finally learned what Catherine Graves had known all along, that loyalty isn't inherited, it's earned, that honor isn't bought, it's chosen, and that sometimes the person society calls too young to matter is the only one brave enough to change everything. The Bronze Star Medal gleamed in its case, a reminder, a promise, a legacy. Not of war, but of the courage it takes to stand your ground when the world tells you to kneel. Alessa Graves had learned that lesson well, and she'd spend the rest of her life teaching it to everyone who thought age mattered more than actions. Because in the end, she'd learned the most important truth of all, that a Graves never abandons her post, never surrenders, never stops fighting for what's right, even if it means washing dishes at 3 a.m. to survive, even if it means standing against immortals with nothing but a spreadsheet and the truth, even if the entire world says it's impossible, because that's what honor means, that's what duty requires, and that's what her mother died to protect.